Hi, it's me, Vicky Marie. Well, this video that I'm making for you today, wow, how did it start? So the other day, I was watching something on YouTube, and you know, when you don't, if you don't actually stop it at the end, it goes on to another video. And a video came up about Princess Diana. And obviously I remember about, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And I started watching this video, and oh my gosh, it brought back so many memories, not only of Diana, but Prince Andrew when he married Sarah Ferguson and everything that happened there. And it was all about that sort of time, which is a time, that was in I suppose that I remember really well. I think a lot of people who are younger and they don't remember Princess Diana and all, they weren't living through everything that was happening, because the news was just all about Diana, wasn't it? It was, if you remember that, she was the most photographed woman in the world at the time, and she just had such a huge effect on the royal family, and she was so popular that I think if you hadn't lived through those times, if you're younger and maybe thinking, well, who is Princess Diana, or all you know about her is maybe what you see, because her memory they have tried to discredit her memory. But I think for those of us that were there, and the feeling when Princess Diana died, the feeling, the outpouring of grief was as much, if not more, than when the Queen died. And also it led to a time when it was the only time really that the Queen was ever unpopular. And I think people have forgotten about this, I haven't forgotten about it. That's why for me, Camilla will never, I can't even think of her as queen. I can't think of her as queen. She's not my queen. She'll never be my queen. And the thing is, even Charles, he's just not a nice person. I mean, even now he's been crowned, he was whinging on the day, wasn't he, moaning. There was video footage of him complaining about everything. To me, Charles is a spoilt brat, and what he did, what they all did to Princess Diana, to me, is just terrible. So as far as I'm concerned, when the Queen died, I have a lot of respect for the Queen, even though I'm not really a monarchist. I'm more believing elected, a republic. But I did have respect for the Queen. She's been in my life, or she had been in my life as all our, forever. I never knew a time when she wasn't queen. So when she died, I think even though she was advanced age, it was still a big shock, wasn't it? And it, her reputation around the world, etc. And now we've got Charles. But anyway, so watching this video just by accident, just brought it all back to me of what it was like at the time. And so I wanted to do a video to remind people about Diana, and to remind people why we should be angry with Charles and Camilla. Not because they're in love, and they always were in love, but because of the way Diana was treated. Because when Charles and Diana met, first of all, Diana was 16 years old, 16, and Charles was nearly 30, he was 29, and he was dating her sister, which I've probably got a name written down somewhere, I don't know what her sister's name is. yeah, her sister Sarah. So Charles was dating her sister Sarah when they first met. And he quickly identified her as good marriage material, a potential wife, because she was young, she was a virgin. She would, yeah, make a good wife, not because he loved her. Even on their engagement, when they talked, the reporters were talking to him about being in love, he said yes, whatever that is. You know, that was his. To me, Diana was used as a brood mare for that family to give them sons. Charles had already was already in love with Camilla, had already had a relationship with Camilla. But of course she was unsuitable at the time, you know, bearing in mind we're going back like quite a lot of years, maybe 40 years, and it was unsuitable. I mean, really, that's what should have happened. Camilla should have divorced her husband and her and Charles should have got married. That's what would happen in normal life, isn't it? There's no barriers like that. It matters your partner is divorced or has children. But Camilla was not felt to be suitable as a bride of the king, and I feel for them for that. If they were in love, that's awful, but that doesn't make it okay for you to then treat somebody else like dirt. And that was how Diana was brought into this toxic environment, you know. And that is we see it now with Meghan and Harry, and I know a lot of people don't like Meghan and Harry now. I personally feel a lot of sympathy with them. She got out of it, and she's got out of it and gone to America. That's her choice. That's where she feels more appreciated. She was receiving so much horrible media attention, etc. You know, once the press turn on you, then they really turn on you. Once the whoever it is that's sort of controlling these narratives, once they turn on you, you know, that's bad. But anyway, I don't want to really talk about that. I want to talk about Diana. Now, while I was researching this video, strange, isn't it? Because I thought I knew quite a lot about Diana and about the situation, but I found things that I didn't know, and it's going to make the video, the story will go off a little bit on a tangent later, but I thought, gosh, makes me dislike Prince Charles even, well, called Prince Charles, I'm just going to call him Charles because I can't call him the K word, because he's not my king, that's for sure. So Charles, he really is not a nice person. You know, he just isn't. He can pretend to be, and he get, you know. Anyway, so let's go back to the story. So Diana was born in July 1961 in Sandringham in the UK. Now, she is from an aristocratic family, but she did work at a nursery as a nanny or an assistant. She's actually the first queen. Oh, sorry, not the first queen, the first royal bride, if you like. Gosh, she was the first woman that was married to the heir to the throne that had actually had a job, you know, a paying job, before she became sort of a member of the royal family. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, so she was born in July in 1961, and she died in 1997 in a car crash in France. I expect you all remember it really well. If you were, you know, of an age then that you can sort of remember, not just you know, you weren't a little child or whatever, you will remember it. That's one of those events that you never forget, where you were when you heard about it, etc. I personally had just moved to Spain. I'd moved to Spain the year before, and I brought my son with me. He was only 9 months old, and we were here, and we went for a coffee in a local bar in the morning. Didn't have any television at home. Bear in mind we had no social media then, and there it was on the TV about Diana, and I just couldn't believe it, you know. it was like the sense it was like when the Queen died, but worse because she was young. You know, she was young. We weren't expecting the Queen to die. Obviously, even though she was elderly, it did seem to come out of nowhere. But she was an old lady, a very old lady. But Diana wasn't, and it was just, well, it was just a total shock, and the whole nation was in mourning. You know, obviously over here there's a big expat community. We all watched the funeral. it, Everybody was devastated by this, and as I say, it's the only time really that the Queen was ever unpopular, because people felt that she didn't show enough emotion. You know, the Queen didn't really show emotion, did she? Because she hadn't been brought up to show emotion. And you know, Diana died the year after her divorce to Charles became final. Gosh, now I'm wondering where to go with this story, which order to discuss it, because there's so many things to discuss. Where do I start? Where do I start? Anyway, they married. So when did they actually? So they became engaged in 1981, and she was 19 years old, and by then Charles would have been. So if he was 32 years old. Now, you know, I don't know about you, but that is a big age difference. I mean, I don't believe, you know, at the end of the day, age differences don't really matter, but they do perhaps when someone's so young. You know, if someone's sort of 30 and they're going out with someone who's 50 or 60 or whatever, but somehow when they're still a teenager like that, and she was a very naive. I wonder now if she'd have known what she was getting into, because it must have seemed to her, a young girl like that, oh my God, this is the future King of England, and you know, he's courting me, and it must have been like some sort of fairy tale in the beginning. And it looked like a fairy tale. The wedding day, I remember the wedding day as clear as anything. We got a day off, didn't we? And me and my friends, we were in a pub in Manchester watching it, and you know, just using it as an excuse to have a drink and a party, really, like most people did. But she looked beautiful. It was now I know now from a student that I had, one of my Spanish students, who was a chauffeur, and his you know, he was in that circle. He was chauffeuring royalty, etc. And his friend, who was also a chauffeur, I know these are anecdotal stories, but why would he tell me this? You know, he wasn't telling it to the newspapers, he just told me this story. The night before Charles and Diana got married, his friend, the other chauffeur, was called to take Charles to the flat of Nicholas Soames. Nicholas Soames is the grandson of Winston Churchill. And he is an MP. He's a member of Parliament, a Conservative MP. He's Charles's best friend. And this chauffeur took Charles to Nicholas Soames's flat, where he met with Camilla the night before he got married to Diana. So when most men are on their stag nights or whatever, he was spending it with Camilla that very night before he married poor Diana. Diana was like a lamb to the slaughter, wasn't she? You know, she was just there to give him heirs. He never loved her. So this is what makes me angry. Not that he loved Camilla, he couldn't help that, and you know, unrequited. But he should have stood up for himself. He should have stood up for himself and stood up for Camilla and said, no, I'm marrying Camilla. Why inflict his dysfunctional family on Diana when she didn't do anything wrong? She was just a young girl. Whatever she might have done or not done later on, that is a result of her relationship with Charles and how he treated her and how she was treated by the royal family in general, in my opinion. These are just my opinions. You can, I'm sure a lot of you are probably shouting at me right now, saying, oh no, no, it was a, that's fine. This is my opinion. If you want to disagree with me, please disagree with me, as long as you disagree with me respectfully, as always, in comments. Or maybe you have some other information. And you know, it was so horrible for Diana once she realised. She said, you know, the marriage was, there were 3 people in the marriage, you know, including Camilla. So, you know, she was suicidal sometimes, she was bulimic. Apparently, she threw herself down the staircase when she was pregnant. And because she just felt so inadequate. She said Charles always made her feel inadequate. Well, I can believe that. You've only got to see him with his temper that he has. Apparently his temper is so bad, he and Camilla, they can't even live together in the same house. You know, because, well, house, the same estate. Because he is virtually impossible to live with, apparently. I mean, he's had everything his own way, hasn't he? You know, the heir to the throne. I mean, you know, I felt for him when the Queen died. At the end of the day, he lost his mum. She's still his mum, whether she's the Queen or not. But I don't know. There's just, what is he? It's like, oh yeah, I can be king now, and then ordering these thrones, and he said he was going to have a toned down coronation. It wasn't toned down, and anyway, I'm not going to say. I really just want to talk about his relationship with Diana. So apparently Diana and Charles were the closest while she was pregnant with William. That was the closest time where they were really seen together. And there were times, I do remember those, when they went off to Australia and they were dancing. I don't know how Camilla felt about that. Maybe that must have been difficult for her. You know, I'm not taking away from the fact that it will have been difficult for her to watch her husband, her loved one, marry someone else. But it wasn't Diana's fault, was it? Those were decisions that Charles took, not to stand up for the fact that he loved Camilla, supposedly. Because then, as I was actually researching this, I'm going to be going off on a complete new tangent, something I didn't even know. Maybe you didn't know, maybe you do know, that actually Camilla wasn't the only woman that Charles was in love with during his marriage. Well, we don't know when this friendship relationship started, but after he separated from Diana, he moved in this woman, Tiggy Leg Book. Now, do you know who she is? I'd never heard of her before. So she was born on the 1st of April in 1965, so she's now 58 years old, similar age to Diana, a little bit younger than Diana. He likes his younger girls. Apparently Lady Colin Campbell, don't know if you know who she is. Probably better you don't know who she is. And she said Charles is only interested in her, meaning Tiggy, as an uncle is interested in a younger niece. But I don't, you know, people don't think that was the case, because after he separated from Diana, he moved this Tiggy Leg Book into his family, if you like, to the household, as a nanny for the boys, for when he had the boys. And this caused absolute outrage. Diana was outraged because this Tiggy one, I mean, I can't believe I didn't even know who she was. She apparently said, I give them what they need, meaning the boys, I give them what they need at this stage: fresh air, a rifle and a horse. She, meaning Diana, the mother, gives them a tennis racket and a bucket of popcorn at the movies. So apparently that is, Tiggy caused outrage when she said that. And she also referred to them as my babies. Now, I don't know about you, if you've had children, if you're a woman or if you're a man and you've had children, you wouldn't like somebody referring to them as, you know, and there's this acrimony in your relationship, etc. And, you know, children, there's normally some acrimony, isn't there, in the first instances of separation. Sometimes people separate amicably and everything's fine, but whenever another person comes into the picture, there's always a little bit of acrimony. It would, you know, it's not nice to think that your children would be referred to as my babies by somebody else, is it? So she's an interesting character. Apparently, well, she was a heavy smoker. I don't know if she still is or not. And she could even ski while even smoke while she was skiing. So there you go. Now I was trying to think, 'cause I think Camilla's a smoker, so I don't know, is Charles a smoker? I mean, obviously you never see him smoke, because you never see anybody smoke now, but he almost must be, because I think it's quite difficult to go out with a smoker if you're a non-smoker, isn't it? Because, and if you've been a smoker and then you give up smoking, I know from experience, you notice smoke on people even more, don't you? You really notice it. So I think it'd be quite difficult to go out with someone who's smoked, or it might make you even start smoking again. It'll go one of two ways. It'll either be, oh, you think it's disgusting, or you'll be thinking, oh gosh, just give me one of them. You know, I don't know which way it would go, probably depend on the day and how you feel. Now Camilla didn't like this Tiggy either. Camilla apparently referred to her as the hired help. And you know, so this has led me to think, oh, was she at the coronation? Was she sort of standing there going, oh, it should have been me? You know, to be honest, the only thing I thought about at the coronation was that should have been Diana. That, to me, that she would have been the only person that I would say, well, that is my queen, or she, to me, and I know she wasn't perfect, of course she wasn't perfect, no one's perfect, but she did so many good things, you know, for charities. She was the first person to publicly hug an AIDS victim. She changed our way of thinking about AIDS. And so, oh, you know, when she walked across that the where the bombs, gosh, what, the mines, when she walked across the minefield, and she did so many things. To anything she did always raised the profile of it. She, you know, she did a lot of good things, I think, and I'm sure, you know, Prince Charles, I can't say the K word with Charles, I think it always reminds me of a spaniel anyway when I say it, so it's quite unfortunate, but maybe he's done good things, I don't know. And another thing, did you know about him? You know, he has, because he's got properties everywhere, you know, he's rich, multi-millionaire, billionaire, I don't know how much money he's got, but of course it'd be a lot. And he's got a property in Romania, which I didn't know until again. You see, I meet a lot of people through my students. I've had and all different nationalities, and that was a Romanian student that told me about that, and I didn't know that. So he must just sort of jet about from property to property, and in the meantime, you know, he's letting. Oh. Now, apparently has got social conscience. So we'll see if he has. We'll see how he took. The only way that I would get any respect for him is if he literally started doing some speaking out against what to me are the horrible things that are happening in Britain at the moment with the government that we've got. You know, and people say to me sometimes, oh, you live in Spain, it doesn't affect you. It does affect me. It affects me as a resident here in Spain. It affects the way you're treated by the Spanish government, the way you're treated by Spanish people, because of our reputation now is so dreadful. You know, they don't want us here in Spain. It's like they used to want us here, but they don't now. And before you start thinking, oh well, they want our tourism, Everybody wants to come to Spain, not just British people, everybody. People from all over Europe, people all over the world, they all want to come to Spain, not, you know, so unfortunately we haven't got the best reputation at the moment. We did have a good reputation, but Brexit spoiled all that. Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to mention, I already knew about this, but it came up in the video that I was watching. Charles and Diana and the boys, when they were young, they spent a lot of time in Spain at the Royal Palace in Madrid, because you may or may not know, but the King of Spain, not the present King of Spain, but his father, Juan Carlos, he is related to the Queen. He's it's something to do with Queen Victoria descendants. And King Juan Carlos, at one time in Spain, after Franco, after the Franco was a dictator, but he brought back the royal family just before he died. He trained King Juan Carlos to be his successor. I have made a video on this, but it's over on my Spanish channel, but I might upload it on here if you're interested in hearing the story of how Juan Carlos fell into disgrace, because he ended up falling into disgrace. But anyway, when he first became king, he was so popular. I mean, you couldn't have been any more popular. He brought democracy back to Spain. So although Franco must have turned in his grave, because Franco primed him to become the next dictator of Spain, really. But as soon as Franco died, King Juan Carlos said, right, I'm going to bring democracy to Spain. And he was young, he was handsome, he was like the darling of Spain, everybody loved him. A bit like Prince Andrew years ago, because I think a lot of people maybe don't know that. We see Prince Andrew as he is now and we just think he's like a dirty old man, isn't he, really? But, you know, at one time he was young, he was handsome. They used to call him the party prince. He was always with lots of different women, including soft porn stars, Koo Stark, etc. You know, but he was popular, you know, and this is similar with King Juan Carlos. So for many, many years, he was super popular with the Spanish people. And it all went wrong in the recession, you know, the big recession in the year 2000, round about the millennium. That was felt especially hard in Spain, especially hard. And it's actually the special relationship that Spain have with China and Europe, of course, that has helped them come out. In Spain now is doing really quite well. But at the time it was bad, you know, people didn't have work, they were starving, literally, because, you know, there's not really a benefit system the same here, but there's like a minimum, you know, and anyway, we won't go, gosh, I could go on forever if I start talking about that. So, and during this time when everybody was really suffering and, you know, could hardly afford to put food on the table, King Juan Carlos, a photo came out and was being circulated of King Juan Carlos, who'd shot an elephant on a safari in Africa. And this picture caused an outrage. One, because he shot an elephant. Two, because where'd he got the money from? So, you know, what's he doing jetting around the world while his people are starving? And that's where it sort of started. Then there was a lot of inquiries into it, and it turned out he'd embezzled quite a lot. You know, there was money, seemed like he'd embezzled money again. If I went into detail, this isn't really what I was on here to talk about, so I don't know I haven't got the exact details in my notes, but basically he was stealing money from the Spanish people. Also, he'd had an affair with a German lady, a long-running affair. So there was a big outcry about that. And I suppose it was at the time that social media was... I think with social media now you can't do these things like years ago. If you watch the interview with Prince Andrew, I'd like to go through that one day with everyone, but he says at one point, oh, people never used to know what you were doing. I mean, he must be gutted that now everybody does know what everybody's doing and they can circulate it in an instant. You know, then really you only knew what news you saw on the TV or in the newspapers or whatever. It wasn't like now where people are just constantly in touch with what's going on. And that's really what happened to King Juan Carlos too, because all this it circulated, you know, around the media, and everybody knew they had this mistress and they'd shot this elephant and stolen this money. So he abdicated, and his son, King Felipe, that's our king now in Spain. Spanish royal family is very low key, you know, you don't, how can I explain it? I mean, I think a lot of people like them and a lot of people don't like them, probably similar to in the UK, but they're not, you know, it's not like this, or we're gods, you know, like it seems to be with the UK royal family. I mean, all that, those crowns and those thrones, it was all so ridiculous, the whole thing, in my eyes. Just looked like something out of a different age. It's not like the royal family's not, it's much more informal, let's say, here. But, so going back to the connection, what probably a lot of you don't know is that King Juan Carlos, he after abdicating, to avoid being held to account for this money that's gone missing, he's in exile abroad in Bolivia or somewhere like that, some South American country. But he went to the Queen's, and he's on the run. Technically, he's on the run. Spanish people are clamouring for him to be brought back to Spain for justice. He wants to come back to Spain, but he wants to come back to Spain to die because he's quite elderly now. And, you know, that's a big thing that's sort of going on. But lo and behold, when the Queen died, he popped up at her funeral. Spanish people were going crazy because they said he should be arrested. You know, he is a wanted man, and he was allowed to go, and he's in a country where there's, you know, they can't get to him. But when he went to the UK for the Queen's funeral and he was there on camera, he should have been arrested and brought to Spain, because this is Europe now we're talking about. Anyway, he wasn't, and so he went to the Queen's funeral, and then he popped off back to Bolivia or wherever it is that he's in exile. So there's a connection there. And when Harry and William were young, Charles and Diana used to spend a lot of holidays at the Royal Palace in Madrid with King Juan Carlos and the Spanish royal family, so they were always very close to the Spanish royal family. So these are little things that we don't know, isn't it? You know, there's so many things going on, and you know, we don't get to know this news. We only get to know the news that they want to give us, and it's only when you start researching it, 'cause it is there in the public domain, this news, but if you don't start looking for it, you don't know what you're looking for, you don't get to know what's happening. So anyway, at the coronation, Charles and Camilla finally got what they'd always wanted. Oh, this Tiggy, let's talk a little bit about her. While she was the nanny for the boys, Diana wrote a letter to Paul Burrell, who you'll remember was her butler, to say that Charles was in love with his personal assistant, this Tiggy Leggy Bork, or Leggy Bork, and that he was planning to kill her, planning to kill Diana. She actually said this in a letter. He was planning to kill her in a car accident so that he could be free to marry Tiggy. Now, I know the letter is true. Well, you know, the letter was sourced in the internet source that I found. So, and why didn't he marry Tiggy, I wonder? Why did he not marry Tiggy, but he married Camilla? And Tiggy since then has married somebody else, and she's apparently running a guest house somewhere. So that's interesting as well. But anyway, so yeah, interesting little side story to the Camilla, Charles, Diana story. And now Camilla and Charles are the K and Q. I hope it's been worth it for them. You know, they've waited a long time for it. How did that feel? He still, as I say, he didn't still look very happy anyway. I don't think anything would make that man happy. And, you know, he puts his other son, Harry, he's just put sort of on the back burner. And then you've got Camilla, who's heading these women's groups, and never says anything in defence of Meghan and the horrible things that people say about her. In fact, it's supposed that she's probably behind a lot of the stories, because she was trying to rebuild her reputation. I mean, at one time she was the most hated woman in Britain, and then with time she sort of refabricated her image, you know. And people, as generations change, you know, younger people don't know this, what happened, and then other people forget, and even older people die, and you know, gradually, and they've waited for this, and they've done it in stages, haven't they, this to sort of get the public used to the fact that there's going to be a Q Camilla. But she'll never be my queen, because Diana will always be. Diana said she wanted to be queen when she was asked, do you think you'll ever be queen? She said, maybe I'll be queen of people's hearts. Look, I'm feeling, you know, I do get emotional about things, especially women that I think have been really done down, you know. And that was something else they did as well, that Nicholas Soames, who he said, well, everybody was saying at the time, all of Charles's supporters anyway, were saying that Diana had mental health problems. Now she did, but they were caused by him and the way he treated her. You know, she did have mental health issues. Gosh, I challenge anyone not to have mental health issues when you find out that your husband, who you've married, you're a 19-year-old virgin marrying a guy who you think's in love with you, and then you find out that all the time he was in love with somebody else, and then another person comes into it as well that he's in love with. I mean, for goodness sake, Charles, how many women did you want to be in love with? You know, just, she was treated badly. She was treated badly, and she was made to feel, or they tried to make people believe that it's because there was something wrong with her. And you know, there was another one. Before Diana, though, there was an Australian lady. The nickname was Kanga. I don't know if any of you remember her, but she ended up with mental health issues and tried to delete herself. And it just makes you wonder what it must be like, you know, going out with nobody comes out very happily from it, except Camilla. I suppose she's ended, not that she looks that happy either, but I suppose they're both not old. I mean, if you look at the Queen, how long she lived, and Prince Philip, you know, they've got another 20 years at least. But I can't say, looking at Charles, he doesn't look quite as healthy as the Queen did, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he will. He certainly comes from a family of longevity, doesn't he? So maybe he will be the king for another 20-30 years, and then it would be William who's sat in the sidelines, and we go through it all again. Oh, and that was the one last thing that I want to say about this. It does remind, but the more you look into it and you see that they're all interconnected, and they're all like Princess Anne had an affair with Camilla Bowles's husband. You know, that's how intertwined all this aristocracy family. So they're all having affairs with each other. it's all very incestuous, isn't it? It reminds me of looking back like to the Tudors and those sort of families, and they're having affairs with their ladies in waiting, or you know, there's all things going on, and then they need the queen just to give them the children. And that, of course, was the problem for Henry VIII. He couldn't find a queen that could give him a son. You know, he tried 6 of them, or 7, or whatever. I lose track of how many there were, and he couldn't get a son. Or he did finally get a son, didn't he, with Jane Seymour? But he died, she died, and then, of course, his son died shortly after becoming king. So, yeah, it's like, I think, my God, all those hundreds of years ago, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. When is Britain going to modernise like other European countries, instead of looking? And I know, because of all the different nationalities that I get coming to learn Spanish here in Spain, Britain is not looked on now as a nation. You know, unfortunately, the reputation of Britain has been so badly damaged over the years. Brexit, all this with the, you know, they don't, even European countries that have royal families, they're not obsessed with them. Like, it is a little bit sort of strange in Britain now. The royal family, like this, well, that's how they describe him here, the ruling family. The ruling family. I mean, God, it's like we're stepping back in time. You know, we want to be a modern, independent nation, don't we? And I may live in Spain, but my family live in Britain. My son now, well, not my son, because he has got Spanish residency like I have. We were lucky, we got our residency before all this Brexit rubbish happened. But other young people now in Britain, they haven't got the freedom of movement that we had for years. This is what makes me a little bit angry about Brexit. A lot of people who voted for Brexit, a lot of the older people, they've now denied so many things to young people that they had all their lives. I mean, my dad fought in the war. He believed in the European Union because they didn't want another war. I mean, people forget why it was created, you know, and it's worked. It's worked. It's caused economic prosperity for the members, peace for the members. I know these wars go on, but not between the European nations. And it's got there's a lot of positivities, and open borders works all ways. You know, now it's very difficult to come to live in and work in Spain. It's all right if you want to come on holiday, yes, that's fine, that's easy so far. But it used to be so much easier. You know, we could move all around Europe. You could go around Europe and not have to show your passport, you know, because Europe is open. Now, whether you think that's right or wrong, it works both ways. Yes, there'll always be some people that will take advantage of open borders and do bad things with it, but that's a minority, really. Open borders is a good thing. It's a good thing generally, and it means cooperation. So now Britain's sort of isolated, you know, but they were always there, and they said, oh, they're taking back sovereignty. They always had sovereignty. Every country has its own sovereignty, but they've also got the backing of Europe. But anyway, I'm probably causing more discord talking about that, because I know a lot of people did want Brexit for whatever reason. But I think, I don't know. But yeah, I'd be interested. Let me know what you think about it. If you voted for Brexit, I'd love to know. And seriously, I'm not taking the mickey or anything. I'd really like to know, because I didn't understand why people voted for it. I mean, it was a very slim majority anyway voted in favour, looking at only 3% difference between those who wanted it and those who didn't want it. So it's not a massive majority of people that wanted Brexit. But I'd just like to know why. What were the reasons? Because I just couldn't see the reasons, honestly. But maybe that's because I live in Spain, so maybe there's things going on in Britain that I wasn't aware of. So I'd like to know why, and also then I'd like to know, what do you think then so far? Do you think it was the right decision, or are you wishing now that we hadn't left? You know, that's just interests me. Okay, so there you go. I've been chatting for quite a long time again, and I went off on tangents as I always do. I hope you still enjoy my chats, even though I do those kind of things. Maybe that's part of what you like about it, I don't know, but that's how I feel. I feel like we're just chatting, except it's a bit one-sided. That's why I like the comments coming back, because then I feel like I'm actually having a conversation, having a chat. So I'm going to do my housekeeping now, so I forgot to do it, didn't I, at the beginning? So this is my book, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher by Vicki Riley, available on Amazon. Tells the story of how I came to live in Spain and the experience that I had with stalking, which is why I have the interest in true crime, and why I'm always trying to defend women, you know, and I'm not anti-Camilla for having an affair, because lots of people have an affairs. I'm anti-Camilla because of the way she treated Diana, that's all. And women, you know, anyway. Also, if you already know some Spanish, I have some little bilingual storybooks for sale on Amazon that are just in Spanish with the English underneath, and you can actually then read the story and compare. Also, if you don't know any Spanish, or if you know a little bit, I have a Break the Language Barrier, Learn Spanish series of books on Amazon. Always remember it's Vicki with an I. And this is level 5, but there are 5 levels. So if you're a beginner, you need level 1. There again, all available on Amazon. What else? Oh yeah, if you want to support my channel, there's so many ways you can do it. You can do it the free way, which is to subscribe. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing and liking the video. Those are easy ways, if you like, and free ways you can support my channel. If you want to support it a little bit more, you can buy me a coffee. There'll be a link somewhere around. Or you can become a member of my channel, which is £1.99 a month. You can cancel at any time, and if you're a member of the channel, you get some extra videos, extra photos, extra community posts, etc. And that just again helps to support my channel. Okay, so I think that's it. So remember to always live and love very wisely. I need to put on a story one day about, you know, a couple that lived happily ever after. There must be some of them. I am going to do that. Well, there was the Queen and Prince Philip, I suppose, but I don't expect that was all plain sailing. But, you know, hey, when you're married for that length of time, it's not all going to be plain sailing, is it? But yeah, so remember to always live and love very wisely. And until I see you again, may your God go with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.